Hello, music lovers. My name is Carter, and welcome back to Recording Records. Today, we are talking about Sabrina Carpenter's new album, Man's Best Friend. Now, I already released some of my reactions to Man's Best Friend on my TikTok and Instagram. You can find in my bio in the description of this video. Additionally, I'm not going to talk about the album cover. I know that's a point of scrutiny, and I've already discussed really recently on my channel my thoughts on that. So if you want to hear that, go ahead. But these are my thoughts on what has been a very controversial album rollout. Certainly not helped by the album cover and the controversies that came prior, but with her being a new premier pop star, this album had a big debut, streaming wise, people just trying to listen to it. A lot of people trying to understand, hey, why do people like Sabrina Carpenter? So a lot of faces on this album, people talking about stuff, a lot of stuff I'm going to disagree with them on, some stuff I'm going to agree with them on. A lot of people that just hate mainstream cliche pop, and I'll get into that later, who are just going to hate on it for whatever. This is really diving into, and I'm not going to get super intricate into it, but diving into what I think the album does right and wrong. But I guess I'll go ahead and give a bit of an overview of the album before we get started. So Man's Best Friend is an album produced by Jack Antonoff and John Ryan, who worked prior on her album Short and Sweet. It's an album full of upbeat hits, with usually some form of disco inspiration, but occasionally with a detour of country inspiration. This is not one of those albums where it's like super intricate, where all the songs are made to like this song can transition to this song and it has this climactic point in the album. It's not one of those albums where it tries to go too far into creating really an albumic experience as much as it tries to put hits on the album, with Sabrina Carpenter being one of the premier hit makers in the world in terms of just sheer raw numbers and effectiveness. And so to sort of get into the album itself, I want to first talk about I'm going to talk first about what it does wrong. And this is not going to be something like, man, I hate the style. I'm going to really talk about what I think the album does wrong, and then I'll talk about what I think it does right, and sort of get into my overall thoughts on this. First of all, the biggest critique I have of this album is the entrances, sort of the structures of the songs. The entrances to like verses especially are really bad on every song except for two of them. There's like at least one verse that has a bad entrance or some form of bad voicing, where this album has that disco element. It's synth, it's very synthy, and so you're expecting something, and then it kind of does not mesh well with her vocal performances, her voicings on some of these verses sometimes. And also the notes she's singing come across as very chromatic and just off. And so that's probably the biggest takeaway from this album, of a negative takeaway, is that a lot of the verses have bad entrances. This was something I critiqued on Please 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 when it came out. As much as I love that song, one of the best songs on the album, one of her best songs. I think it's the second verse after the chorus, I think. I'm remembering off the top of my head. I'm not sure. But one of the verses has like a really weird entrance. And this album is really no different, where instead of just one song, it's just that way throughout the album. A lot of just weird verses and entrances, a lot of off-putting things. For an album that tries to make hits, the point of this album is to put as many radio hits as possible on it, as many bangers and bops on it as possible. And it can be very off-putting when the verse is getting in the way, because you're just trying to not think about it. It's just like you're grooving along to it, and that's what it is. With all the songs being upbeat, with the exception to one, that's kind of the vibe it's going for, and sometimes that's thrown off by sort of the verses, and that's a problem. Additionally, more of a minimalist point, a more minimal point, but still present. A lot of the times when we get into these choruses, the instrumental is not really productionally, like, it doesn't have the volume or the energy it needs. And I'll get into the production in a minute and the beats in a minute, because I have a lot of good to say about them. But there's a lot of times where it just doesn't drive the chorus very well. And it sort of runs juxtaposition with the other songs of the album where the choruses are so good. They sort of get into the good parts. Like when Sabrina Carpenter is singing full voice and into those choruses, and the instrumental is really well surrounding her buttery voice, it's so good. It's so fun to listen to. There's times, though, when it's like, it's good to listen to, I just need more push from the instrumental. I need more volume. I need more I need more. I need this to separate itself from the verses more. And sometimes it fails on that. But otherwise, I mean, this is an album that's super upbeat with really good produced drums that are super snappy, fun to listen to. It's groovy, it's funky. The disco elements are really good. So it's fun to listen to. I like to listen to this album a lot. There was only one song that I didn't find myself like nodding my head along. So just at the minimum, songs are just fun to listen to. Sometimes interrupted by bad voicings in the verses or entrances, and then things that could be better because they were like the instrumental could be doing more. And you saw that in some of my reactions on TikTok or Instagram if you follow me there. But that's like the key takeaways of this album. This is an album that, in comparison to Short and Sweet, I think has a more concise stylistic direction, even though it has more of that country departure, which I critiqued in Short and Sweet. It sort of, that country departure introduced itself in the first song, so it's not as unexpected. And so it's a song full of good hits because of the country departures and the maximum that there are. I think this album finds a harder job of crafting its unique identity. It more blends into her discography in comparison to something like Short and Sweet. However, it's still a bop. It's a banger. There's a lot of songs I find myself enjoying a lot. Comparison to Short and Sweet, I'd say there's a lot less ceiling here. There's nothing here that I'd point at and say, this is the best song of the year. Nothing even close. But there's really only one song that I think is really not that good. Most of them are like, I think this probably has a better floor than Short and Sweet. There's more songs that are just like there's a lot of songs that are just pretty good. And that's it. They're just good. And so it's fun to listen to. I enjoyed listening to this album. I guess I'll go ahead and get into my rating. I'm going to give this I can see it anywhere between a 7.75 and an 8.25. I'm just going to call it like an 8 out of 10, which I am known for inflating my rankings compared to most people's rankings. That's like a 6.5 to a 7. So if that's how you want to think about it, 6.5 to a 7, I guess is what I would call it if I was another critic. I just, with the same brain, I just inflate my scale because I think our music that we hear is a lot closer to the best of music than the worst of music. So it's a lot closer to 10 than to 1. So really like a 6.5 and a 7 is what this album is. And so it's good. You'll hear a lot of talk about how this is the worst album ever of the year. And I have to say, this is something that in many ways is unique to mainstream cliche pop and to rap to some extent, where a lot of people who don't listen to the music that they're talking about give opinions on topics that they couldn't really tell you what's good and bad from it. And there's a reason, like, if you watch my channel, you would know I've never covered a country album. That's because I haven't dived into enough into exposing myself to it to where I know what's a good and bad country song. I couldn't tell you. I mean, I could come up with an idea, but like, I certainly, if I would not turn to my channel at this point in time. At the future, I hope to get to that point. I want to cover all bases, but at this moment, I'm not the channel to turn to for that. You can come to me for rock, rap, pop, whatever. Country, I haven't touched that base yet. Indie, you come to me for indie. Pop, country, I've not touched that base yet. I've not really gone into it. Eventually, I will. I haven't. A lot of people are coming in here and telling me, well, this is the worst, or I'm seeing this is the worst album ever. And you have like 2014 Forest Hills Drive in Wolf vinyl, like in your background. And it's like, you don't even listen to this. Like, it's because people are seeing that Sabrina's so popular. And it's like, well, let me understand this. And I'm not blaming them. Go try to see why people are enjoying stuff. Go try to listen to new music. I should do that with country right now. Go try to enjoy new music. But I would suggest for at least myself, and this is how I'm going to carry my channel, I'm going to get a footing in whatever I'm talking about before I talk about it. I'm not going to speak from ignorance, because with some things, it's like you haven't ever listened to a song from this genre. You don't have a lot of exposure to this genre. How are you going to tell me what's good and bad from the style? And, you know, the people will tell you, well, it's like people from the rap community, the rock community will tell you, oh, but I like Leve, or I like Claro, though. And it's like, but they don't really make radio-friendly pop music. Like, I'm talking specifically about cliche pop music. I'm talking about like Sabrina Carpenter, late career Taylor Swift, Tate McRae. I'm talking about, like prime Ava Max or Selena Gomez, Gracie Abrams. This is what I'm speaking about. Just because something is cliche, just because something is normal doesn't mean it's bad. Innovation is no marks of quality. Innovation just means something new. And so there's so many examples through history of artists who were hated at a time for being too cliche. They came really past the point of innovation, and it's like, hey, I've heard this too much. This isn't good. I've heard this too much. But it's like, that doesn't really correlate to the quality of music. It just means me as a listener is not wanting to hear this at the moment. And there's a lot of examples to this. Like, people hated the Carpenters, or when they were around, because the Carpenters were too soft and music was moving towards more heavy rock, and the Carpenters were too soft, too poppy, and that was it. People didn't like it. Nowadays, we know, hey, the Carpenters had a lot of bangers, okay, and we can recognize that now. And thankfully, Sabrina Carpenter has her base to where they can at least support her. I'm not going to say everything she releases is good. I just gave this album, according to most people's scales, like a 6.5 to a 7. That's not an amazing score. It's not bad, but it's not an amazing score. I'm not saying I ride for everything, but I'm going to give a fair score to this. And it's like, this is a album full of good songs. That's it. This is an album full of good songs. That's good. That's a good album. That's a good album. And so those are my thoughts on Man's Best Friend. I do prefer short and sweet, but I don't think it's like too far apart. I think this is a pretty good second album. It's just like this album needed more time, I think, to work on it, and it could be better than short and sweet just because it has such a better floor. But all the problems I talked about keep it down, which is an issue. But overall, it's a good album. It just needed more time. The more time songwriting, the production had some really cool beats where we especially dived into that disco, like in House Tour. We really dived into that style, and it was such a fun song. It's just like, I need the production to be louder. I need more focus on really building this beat to be a bit bigger, really driving the choruses. That's what I want. Drive the chorus, you know? And so there are those problems we're going to talk about. I'm just saying this not to crap on anyone or say I'm better than anyone. It's to say, for my channel, I'm going to come out here and tell you what I think something is based on its quality. And that's it. That's it. I'm rating quality here. That's my understanding, because throughout this channel, I'm going to tell you what I think is good, what I think is bad, based off its quality, not based off of its style. That's it. The point is, if Sabrina Carpenter dropped an album with the 12 best pop songs of the year, people would still find a reason to not like it because it's cliche pop music. It's all about quality here. And I think this album is of good quality. I had fun listening to it. I had fun re-listening to it. I re-listened to it again. It was a lot of fun. So those are my thoughts on A Man's Best Friend. I enjoyed it. A lot to be desired in terms of things it could do better. I think it really held itself back. But saying it held itself back is sort of implying the fact that, hey, there was something really good here. And I think that goodness still persists despite maybe its limitations. Anyways, thanks for watching. God bless. Goodbye. Have a good day.